Howdy, and welcome to our presentation on why the Grinch stole Christmas. The Grinch comes from somewhat of a troubled childhood. He never knew his real parents, and he was raised by two Whos, who found him on their doorstep. Growing up, the Grinch faced many social challenges that made it difficult for him to feel loved by his peers. After a triggering situation, he ran away from home to Mount Crumpet, where he has resided since then, spending his days alone with his dog Max, collecting garbage from Whoville. And a few distinct characteristics that Mr. Grinch displays is being rude, self-centered, irritable, envious, and argumentative. How the Grinch Stole Christmas is about Mr. Grinch, who feels a strong hatred for the Whos of Whoville as well as Christmas. One day, Mr. Grinch decides he wants to ruin Christmas by posing as Santa and stealing the decorations, food, and gifts from the Whos. After feeling convicted for his actions, he later returns what he stole back to the Whos, and the movie ends with Mr. Grinch feeling welcomed back into society. After further investigation, we're able to diagnose Mr. Grinch with oppositional defiant disorder. The DSM-5 classification of this disorder is disruptive impulse control and conduct disorder. Typically, disorders under this category involve problems with respecting authority, self-control of one's behaviors and emotions, as well as a pattern of behavior that violates the rights of others. These are the symptoms an individual would exhibit when suffering from ODD. Mr. Grinch exhibits all of these symptoms except one where the individual would blame others for their own mistakes. But the two we'll be focusing on are the easy loss of temper and the excessive pattern of vindictiveness. Mr. Grinch shows many examples of vindictiveness behavior, but the main example is when he plots against Whoville and steals food, their food, gifts, and decorations in hopes of ruining their Christmas. And then when finding evidence of easy loss of temper, one main example is when Mr. Grinch loses his temper at the Whobilation celebration, causing a ruckus in the town and burning down the city Christmas tree.
Oppositional defiant disorder can be a tricky disorder to treat, especially as the individual ages. But there are some forms of treatment that have experienced more than a modicum of success. One of the most common methods is to have the individual attend psychology sessions. This would allow the Grinch to work through all of his problems in his past that have caused him to develop this disorder. This would also allow him to discuss potential conflicts that arise in his life that may hamper his recovery. Additionally, the psychologist could help the Grinch develop anger management skills and improve communication skills, which would ultimately make him a more productive member of society. An alternate form of treatment would be for the Grinch to begin attending a support group, which would give him a chance to connect with individuals who are experiencing the same kinds of trials as him, and possibly share a similar history. A support group would also give him a chance to refamiliarize himself with society and appropriate human interactions, since he has lived an isolated life on Mount Crumpet for much of his life. Each of these treatments would be useful for the Grinch for different ways. Psychology sessions, for example, would allow a professional to focus on developing and improving certain aspects of the Grinch, while simultaneously allowing him a safe and confidential space to discuss any insecurities he may have. Group therapy, on the other hand, would give the Grinch a chance to form meaningful bonds with other members of society and develop the ability to behave like a normal Who of Whoville. Drugs, however, would not be the most successful form of treatment, since it still keeps the Grinch in isolation. The only ethical concerns that may face these forms of treatment is that the Grinch may deceive his therapist or support groups so that they believe he has recovered, but after he is cleared with a clean bill of health, he may revert to his old ways and cause more pain and suffering. A way to prevent this to some degree would be to schedule regular follow-ups for him.
After analyzing the Grinch and all aspects of the symptoms he demonstrates throughout the film, we believe this is an accurate representation of oppositional defiant disorder. Throughout the film, the Grinch consistently displays angry and irritable mood. He consistently is deliberately annoying to others and actively refuses to comply with the rules. We found other symptoms the Grinch displays that were also consistent with ODD throughout the film. The Grinch sought revenge for at least 6 months, though he was vindictive for years as he sought revenge on Whoville since childhood. His actions were not limited to setting, as he displayed the same symptoms consistently in his home on Mount Crumpet and in the town of Whoville. Though the Grinch was alone for a significant part of the film, when he did interact with others, his actions did not change, and the symptoms of oppositional defiant disorder were consistent no matter who he was surrounded by. This is a good time to point out that in order for a patient to truly have oppositional defiant disorder, the persistence and frequency of the symptoms should exceed what is normal for an individual's age, gender, and culture. This further suggests that the Grinch truly does have oppositional defiant disorder, as he is middle-aged, which usually suggests maturity, and he does act consistently against the culture of Whoville throughout the film. Due to all of this evidence, we do believe that How the Grinch Stole Christmas does display an accurate representation of oppositional defiant disorder. As far as how realistic the film is, it is obvious that there is not a large green fuzzy man running around on a snowflake. However, the symptoms the Grinch displayed were accurate to the symptoms of an individual with oppositional defiant disorder. This is very important to our society today, with a bigger conversation of psychological disorders taking place in the world around us. It is necessary to see a popular film character who is able to begin to live a relatively normal life while living with his disorder. However, in the film, the Grinch miraculously overcomes his disorder, which would not be the case in real life. This film does fail to show that an individual must undergo treatment to overcome oppositional defiant disorder. For this particular disorder, the Grinch would have had to participate in psychology sessions, attend support groups, or would have had to be placed on medication by a licensed professional to begin to live a relatively normal life with his disorder. So while the film does accurately display an individual with oppositional defiant disorder, it fails to accurately display the necessary treatment for this disorder. Thank you so much for listening to our analysis on Why the Grinch Stole Christmas. Merry Christmas, thanks, and gig 'em.